I'm going to talk about today is I'm most known as a wedding photographer. I've been doing it for about 28 years. So I'm going to kind of in a nutshell share 7 tips with you on how to improve your wedding photography that I think makes your day go by a little slower. Or kind of the catchphrase I say is shoot what you want, not what you get. So Alpha Universe, they actually just relaunched the site yesterday, so it has a brand new look. But more importantly, if you want to go rewatch this talk and any of the other Artisan talks, you can go to Alpha Universe, and they'll be up on there after the show and throughout the show. So my 7 simple tips. The first thing, and I always put little controversial titles, but don't photograph the wedding for the bride and groom, photograph it for yourself. And what I mean by that is really like, at the end of the day, you need to be excited. You need to find your own vision. So yes, you have to communicate with your couples and find out what they want. But if you want to stay excited and keep doing and keep loving it, I've been doing it 28 years and I'm still not tired of it. You kind of have to shoot for yourself, fulfill your own needs. So basically it's kind of like shooting the way you want to shoot as opposed to shooting for the client. And the one thing that I say is like, every photographer is different. Like we might try to copy someone, but the way your eye sees something is just as unique as your fingerprint, your personality. Nobody has your personality. And really, like if your work comes from your heart and comes out of your heart, that's where your images are going to be unique and you can stand out from other people. Intent is a big thing. I feel like when I have good intent for certain things, and sometimes on the wedding day you're working fast, but when I was doing an engagement sitting here and I knew that I wanted to use the side of this warehouse and I knew that I wanted blur. I like to use a little motion in my work sometimes. And so I sat there for 20 minutes and we shot cars going by. But this is in Los Angeles and we don't typically have too many cabs in Los Angeles. And I did get like 1 or 2 because this is downtown Los Angeles. But then the very last frame I took, I get this cab that goes by that's blue with a little yellow. So it's a nice contrast, but it also kind of matches the building. But I always feel like when I have intent with something like a shot that I want to do, the universe kind of always rewards me with like something like this to kind of make it a little bit better. And so the other thing I say is like, what's your thing? Like, do you have one thing that you do at weddings or your style that stands out? And I mentioned earlier, I like to use a little movement in my work. So I take a shot like this, the couple wanted a shot in front of their car, and I did that shot, but then I did something for myself. I created a little movement, I slowed the shutter speed down to about a 15th of a second, and then just created, had them walk by so that I use movement. So it's one of the things I use in my work. Again, here's another example of that. Taking a very typical, we've all shot getting ready, but then just show, a little movement. It gives that image a little bit more depth, a little bit more feeling, a little bit more interest, because otherwise it might not be as exciting. It's just, you're documenting that. Here's another image, I did use movement. And then the other thing that I like, even though this isn't the bride and groom's grandfather, is I concentrate on grandparents at the wedding. And that really came from my own love of my own grandparents. When I was about 22, 23, my grandfather died and he was the last one to go. And he taught me to fish and all those things that we love about our grandparents. And when he was gone, he's not there anymore. And I've heard so many stories at weddings, like people's grandparents that do attend the wedding, like sometimes die within a year, 6 months. Even my own wife's grandma had a stroke after our wedding. So I try to concentrate on grandparents and just get fun, kind of unique headshots of them. So tip number 2, have your bride and groom lie to their families and friends. And really what I'm having them lie about is the 2 things that make my brides late the most are late people, right? But hair and makeup's number 1. So I usually suggest to my couples that they lie 1 whole hour to her hair and makeup person. So if we're gonna do first look at, let's say 1 o'clock, I say you tell hair and makeup you need to be ready for your photographer at noon. And if they're done for some miracle, then just enjoy that. Sit around, relax, talk to your girls, drink champagne, have a good time. And then of course family, like everybody has family members that they know run a little late. So again, for the timeline on when they need to be wearing, I usually suggest like 15 minutes to a half an hour based on who their family are. But educating your clients is the most important thing you can do. I spend a lot of time with my clients telling them like the things that can make them late, you know, just sort of prepping them for what to experience on the wedding day, what's going to happen, how the workflow is going to go, how I'd like to do the pictures, etc. So part of that is first look. I truly believe in getting my couples to see each other before if they want to. I don't say they have to, but I would say 90% of my couples today will see each other before. And doing a first look with that is super important. I usually just try to find a place that's private, that has good light and a great location. I want all three, but if I can't have it, you know, privacy to me is the most important. And then when I let them see each other for the first time, I don't dictate what happens. It's very organic. I get her set usually and I bring him to her and I have him count, you know, so I can get ready to shoot, and I just let them walk in and do what they're gonna do. Tip number 3, don't photograph your bride and groom walking down the aisle. Now you might think, well, that's crazy. And basically what I do is, yes, I photograph the bride and groom walking down the aisle, but I don't do it. I have my second photographer do it. What I do is I will hang out for the last 20, 30 minutes with my couples and just observe. I sit there with her in the room, you know, waiting to walk down the aisle before she's gonna get ready. I walk with them right up to the back of the aisle before they walk down. So this is one wedding that I shot. This is actually the very first wedding I shot, all Sony, I think about 2013. But I was just sitting with this bride and her father, and I got so many amazing, like, they were laughing and playing games, they were crying. And if you're not with your couple, you're gonna miss this stuff. Like, I think some of the best emotional images that I capture at a wedding are those 30 minutes as she walks down the aisle. So here's a wedding that I did in Cabo, certainly. So I'm gonna show you a series of this one wedding to show you. So we're standing there, she's starting to cry. You can kind of see the tear drip, you know, which turned into laughter. And she's standing with her dad. Her dad then like shows me the inside of his coat, which have like a custom embroidery of the bride and groom's name on it. He's proud of. So here he is, and I'm walking her up to the aisle. Now this is my perspective looking at the groom. My second photographer is still up front shooting her coming down the aisle, but the groom's crying. Dad's just starting to come into the photo. You know, the laughter gives dad a kiss. So all those images I wouldn't have got unless I was behind her, you know, and usually it's like when you're standing there waiting for her to walk down, they're crying, they're nervous. So this is the ceremony. And again, I have my second shooters do a lot of the basic stuff so that I'm free to do things like this. I had already scouted this shot, but I had to climb about 50 to 90 steps to get back up to this one spot to get this view. So as soon as I was done shooting those shots coming down the aisle, I bolted up here, got this image, and then this is afterwards. Again, like I have my second shooter do the basic stuff to cover me so that I have it, but then I'm free to kind of shoot how I want. I love this image because of the joy and then sort of the representation of the bride and the groom, the bridal party on either side. But then the celebration, you know, my second shooter is still shooting this, but I'm typically like shooting it available. And then if I've done first look, my couple seeing each other, I've done all my pictures before the wedding. The reason I do that is I tell my couples so that when you kiss and say I do and walk down the aisle, you're free to go do what you want, be with your family. You know, you don't have to do anything. But when I have locations like this and it's conducive to it, I like to do what I call like bride and groom bonus time, where I suggest to them, once you kiss and say I do, just keep walking. I want you to go for a walk, enjoy each other. I follow them with a 70 to 200. You know, the G Master is the one that I shoot. And I stay out of there, but I let them enjoy each other and I just shoot. And then maybe when they're done with that, like I call it a second first look, we might spend 5-10 minutes and do just a few more images. You know, the lights change, sunset, late in the day. You know, it all depends on your location. But so I did this image with them. And we spent no more than 10 minutes, and then I got them right back to their cocktail party. So really, I've shared this, but I want you to become the second shooter at your wedding. To do that, you have to have a reliable second shooter that you trust and somebody that you work with that you can rely on. But that's kind of what I'm saying, and by doing so, you're free to do more of what you want. So even when I'm doing some of my bigger group shots, I'll have my second shooter actually shoot those images, but I'm the one that directs it. You know, I deal with the families, I talk to the families, I pose them, I get them where I want. So I'm interacting with them and I'm getting them set, and as soon as that shot's set, I just move out of the way and let him take the photo, and then I come back in and okay, you can sit down and you go over here. And it's a nice interaction because I'm dealing with them. I'm not the one person doing both jobs. So it helps it go faster, definitely. And you know, it's just more personable and fun, you know, than stressing back there if I have to do images. This is another one, like, so during cocktail hour, I have my second shooter do these type of groups where you walk up to the people, hey, you guys get together, let me take a quick picture. I have hated this part of the wedding for 28 years. I hate to do it. I don't know why, I feel like an idiot. You know, you guys get together for a picture? So I make my second shooters do it, which is sort of why I do this. Now I walk around with my G-Master and I'll do candid headshots of guests and single them out. And my couples absolutely love this. Like they say, oh my gosh, you caught my aunt, that's totally my aunt. You know, like you catch, and the trick to doing this is like I make it a game. I say I'm gonna get 15 images, and I just keep moving. Because sometimes you'll fixate on one person, like you saw it, and then you're like, damn it, she's not doing that. Just keep moving and come back to her or him. And as I walk through cocktail hour, and of course this is much easier when you have an outdoor cocktail reception, a little more challenging inside, but you can do it. But I'm telling you, your couples will absolutely love this. The one thing brides complain about, I think the most, if I'm just reading on the internet, is that they don't get enough pictures of their guests. You know, we concentrate on the family and the bridal party, and we have this huge job to make sure we capture everybody, and then sometimes ignore the guests. So it's just one way to give them some different and unique guest photos. So the other thing I say, you know, cry at your weddings. You know, meaning that you really need to, don't just take the photographs, but actually feel them. Be in the moment. You know, obviously it's not your wedding, they're not your family, but I really try to put myself and understand this. This image was right after first look, and then that was like kind of the first look with his mom. And so she came in. So again, use that first look. You can do first look with dads, first look with nieces and nephews, moms, parents. This is another one of the, where I just followed them after the wedding. They got married at a little farm in Seattle. And I just followed them with my 70-200 and I shot. And one of the great things I love about the Sony, and really what attracted to me, is like the dynamic range in the sensor. You know, most of the cameras have 11 to 15 stops of dynamic range, so you can kind of let your highlights blow out. It's kind of like I shot film, and when you shot film, you could expose for the shadow and let the highlights blow out. And that wasn't so much the case when digital first came out, but now it is. Master your camera. What I mean by this is, and you know, if you're not that person that like absolutely knows your camera inside and out, like if you can't put your camera on manual and go, then you haven't necessarily mastered your camera, in my opinion. But the reason that you should challenge yourself to make that work is because once you do and once you're comfortable, you can break the rules and go back and use all the automatic settings or whatever. But what it does is it allows you to see what's in front of you. Because when you're not so worried about the buttons and the exposures, you're free to kind of see more what's in front of you. It's kind of like when you first learned to ride a bike. Once you got your balance or whatever, then you're free to take your hands off the steering wheel, right? And you try to do that, crash a few times, but you got it. And you know, you really need to make time for yourself to be creative. So when I say shoot what you want and not what you get, I run on a 3-hour timeline prior to my ceremony. So if I have let's say a 6 o'clock ceremony, I show up actually at 1 or at 2. So 2 to 3 for me is getting ready. I prefer to do that. I'm with my clients, I say up to 10 hours. Yes, up to 10 hours, not 10 minutes. And I'm getting the 10-minute in the back. So I choose that hour because I want a whole hour to shoot first look. And then the first hour is first look and bride and groom for an hour. The second hour is immediate family bridal party. And the third hour is extended family and special friends. And then I'm done. I schedule it that way too. With 3 hours, there's time for things to run a little late. But I would say because I educate my brides, because I do this stuff, my brides are late 5% of the time. And if they are, at the most, it's 15, 20 minutes. So this allows me time to do what I want. This is a shot that I did on a New Year's Eve wedding. I saw those Campbell soups. I'm like, oh my gosh, I want to hang her dress from that. And it was a location that's like pretty popular in Minneapolis, and I was like, I want to do something that I bet no one's ever done here before. So that's my own challenge. Stop using flash at your weddings. So again, what I mean by that is I shoot a lot of available light now at my receptions because the Sony cameras, have high ISOs, the sensor quality, the lens quality are amazing, and I can do that. But again, to be safe, my second photographer shoots flash and of the basic things. So I'm free to shoot available light, as I want. This is like 8,000 ISO of a fire performer, G Master lens. But I think by shooting it with the what you see, especially if you have a wedding that has some decent lighting, it's how people remember it. You kind of add flash to that, and yes, it's beautiful, but it doesn't necessarily look how people will remember it. I mean, this is what the room looked like, and if you take a flash photo of that, it's gonna, you drag the shutter, you're gonna get a little purple in the background, but it's not gonna be that. I try to get like an epic dance shot, which means, my second shooter is on the dance floor, getting, sometimes first dances are super short and you get caught with your pants down. But I always arrange this, so I find the spot that I want. I talk to the videographers and I ask them, please stay off the dance floor for the first 20 seconds of the dance, just so I can get this shot and then go where you want. If I don't get it in the first 20 seconds, that's my own fault. Again, available light. This is a wedding that I did in London last summer. This singer was so amazing, that microphone was amazing, and when she started belting out this song, I just happened to be in the right place at the right time. I got multiple expressions from her, but this is one of my favorites. Even think of this is 1600 ISO. I mean, look how clean that file is. It's not that high, right? It's not that high of an ISO. Where this shot is 5000 ISO, and it's still clean. I mean, that's what's amazing about the Sony sensors. I mean, you can shoot stuff. I came from shooting film. It took me the longest time to just get past 3200 because that was our limit, because film used to be 3200. You could push it to 64, but then it was probably typically grainy. But this wedding was in New York at Ellis Island. So this is where all the immigrants came through, and they did a beautiful job lighting this. And so I wanted to show that ceiling. But again, I'm free to do this during cake cutting. My second shooter is shooting flash, getting the basic things that they need. So number 7, don't work so hard at your weddings. Basically, just slow down a little bit, have a good time. This is another one of those after the wedding where I just had the bride and groom kind of enjoy each other's time, and I roamed around and shot different images. And take less images. You don't need to take 10,000 images at a wedding. I personally shoot me at the end of the day for one 10-hour day, probably 1,500, maybe 2,000 images at the end of the day. My second shooter might shoot another, so I might have 3,000, 3,500 to cull and go through by the end of the day. Think simple. I personally feel like I do a longer talk called The Power of Simple. I think the more simple your images are, the more powerful they are. Look around at work and see what you gravitate towards, but the more simple the image, the more powerful it is. So just use basic rules of composition and think about it. Sony has, for me, what I love, a rule of thirds grid in the camera that I can turn on and turn off. So I'm always looking and thinking about my composition because it's right there in front of me as I'm looking through the viewfinder. But lines and patterns, that's one thing that make your image. Middle ground, foreground, background. This is a wedding that I did in Bermuda. And what I was really attracted to this is I had never seen ivy on sand before like that. So I was like, oh my gosh, this is so beautiful. So I made sure I got down low and got the perspective of more of the ivy going out. So the ivy's the foreground, their middle ground, and the blue is the background. Rule of thirds, again, also simple, like a simple background. I shot this from above, just had her sit on the ground. It's probably one of my favorite, I'm me saying it, but I'm like, this could hang in a museum. It's such a cool picture. And colors, sometimes this isn't a composition thing that they teach, but I think there's some images that you can pick through your work that it's the color that makes the image, right? Yes, the lighting and everything has to be there, but I think this particular image, it's the simplicity of the lighting and the color that really helps this pop. This is something they do in Minnesota. Every winter they build ice castles. It's like probably 5-6 acres of these great ice structures. It's different every year, and they charge to walk through it, but it's pretty cool. Of course, focus and depth of field, like where you want your people to look, you can dictate that by where you put the focus in the image. Light and shadows, we can use it in so many different ways, but here's another prime example of me just shooting available light, long lens during a reception. I'm typically during toast, the camera's on silent shutter. All of Sony, well, all of the newer ones have silent shutter. So this is the S2, but I can just shoot, and this is 12,800 ISO. I mean, that's still, there's noise, you can see it, but that's completely acceptable. If you wanted to make that black and white, it would be beautiful. Background, this is the ice castle again, but the more simple you can make your backgrounds, the more powerful your image is. The less things that are distracting in the image, the more powerful it can be. Expression, that's of course the other thing. You can keep the background simple. Here's another great example of the dynamic range and the sensors of Sony. Sometimes when I'm doing first look, I don't want to obsess about where I'm going to do it. I'm running out of time. I just want to, but they need to see each other before I can start walking around. So I did this right in the hotel suite, right in front of the window, but I wasn't afraid to because I know that with the Sony sensors, I have the ability to do that. Even if it's blown out a little bit, in Capture One, Lightroom, whatever you use, you can fix that. Distractions in images, like really if you look at pictures, like this was at a reflection in a hotel, which I thought was cool, a wedding I did in New York. It's a cool image, right? But then I just did that to make it a little bit more simple. So I took out, I took out the one light, because I like the lights up there, but I really didn't like that building in the background. But just that little simple change, so you can look at your, and don't do this to all your wedding images, but like when you get your images back for your albums or your samples that you want to put on Instagram or on your blog or whatever, look at what can you do to make it more powerful. Remember I showed you this picture? This is the before picture, that's the after picture. It's a lot more powerful that way. You don't need to see all that other crap. And in today's world, cropping, you can crop however you want. It doesn't have to be proportional, because most of the time, for me anyway, I'm printing albums, I can put the picture whatever size I want in a book and however I want to show it. Yes, if it has to be an 8x10 or something, that might be a little bit more of a challenge. But that's it, thank you guys. Again, I told you at the beginning, alphauniverse.com, they just relaunched it. It's an amazing source for Sony stuff. And my talk and all the other talks throughout the 3 days will be up there. So if you want to go back, you sat here and take notes, or why didn't you tell me that, Robert? But I did. But you can go there afterwards and see all the talks. So thank you very much.